Okay. So you typed me in the past, and I just wanted to get another session just because, well, I wanted to see if it'd be consistent, but I also had like a few questions about uh, I wanted to figure out my Enneagram tri-type, and I wasn't sure if you could help with that. Uh, I also had uh, I also had a few questions regarding like you talk about like the INFJ personality type and like their issues with like what do you call it self concept, like they have a weak self concept, and I was interested in talking about that because I thought that was just very interesting and
Okay, so I'm guessing I typed you as INFJ. I don't really remember the typing session, but
yeah.
do you want me to spend time double checking that?
Could you
Yeah, sure.
just like maybe a few like
Yeah, sure. Let me just get this coffee I just heated up. I'm running a couple minutes behind schedule here.
it's all good, it's all good.
Okay. So let me start with this. Let me start with CE stuff. Can you please solve for me air pollution?
Solve air pollution.
Yeah.
um okay. I think you asked a similar question in one of your recent typing sessions, so
I
I'm gonna
asked
try
about
and come up
ocean
with.
pollution. This is air
Okay,
pollution. Different question.
okay. Um, I mean, the only thing I can think to do, which I think it's already kind of done, is try and penalize people who commit it. Um, I mean, there's also the possibility of like you could try and come up with a way of uh, maybe figuring out a way to prevent even those who still commit it from having any impact on like the atmosphere.
Okay. Can you break down the task of taking your dog for a walk into 4 steps?
Okay. Um, okay. So first, I get the dog on a leash. I go outside, or I go out the front door. I then go on a walk. How many steps was it? Four? Or
Yeah, 4.
I go on the walk, and then after that, I return home with the dog.
Okay, that's 4 steps. Um, can you talk to me about whether it gratifies you? Do the peacock beat. It gratifies you to be useful to people?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily. I mean, I wouldn't say no, but I wouldn't say like it's like I wouldn't say it doesn't gratify me, but it's not like something that I find like I'm not searching for the chance to like you know help someone with a task necessarily. But
Okay.
I mean, obviously, like, I do feel good if, like, someone has an issue and I'm able to help them deal with it or whatever.
If you were to describe yourself in terms of your own usefulness, what would you say about it?
My own usefulness. Well, okay. So is this question like asking like what would I be useful for in particular, or
I mean, I'm asking, do you view yourself as a useful person? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
yes, I'd say I'm useful. I would say I have knowledge on how to do many tasks, and if not, I'm I'm very good at doing research to figure out how to do those tasks. Um, so I would consider myself helpful, but still, that might depend on the individual I'm trying to help.
Okay. You've got to move a log pile from one corner of the yard to the other corner of the yard. What are some things you need to consider before starting to move logs?
Are there any objects in the way? Is the first thing I'd say. Okay. Do we? How many people is it going to take to move the logs? Is it just me, or do I need to get someone else to help me move the logs? Uh, is it possible uh, there's an object I can use, like some sort of tool I can use to help me move the logs? Uh, is there enough space for me to move the logs?
Okay.
I think that's all.
Okay. Um, what is one thing you feel like if you could pick one tool of some sort that you can't move the logs without, what would it be?
Probably the well, I, mm, maybe like another person would be like the one thing. Or does it have to be a tool, or can it be like is it limited to like actually an object?
The answer is obviously gloves. You gotta have gloves to move logs.
I've never done anything like that. Like I have no idea. I'm like,
Well, obviously logs are barky and sharp, and they're gonna scrape your hands. If you gotta lift and carry random logs, you gotta better have some gloves on.
if you can't tell, like I don't lift logs. I don't, you know, I'm usually the one that asks other people to move things for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, maybe you should begin a regimen of log lifting. Maybe to help you commune with nature. Um, okay, so those sort of answers in general are consistent with TE Polar. I think the things you wanted to know before you did pretty good job on. Um, like you need to know if there's something in the way. You need to know if there's enough space where you're putting them. But the second thing you said was you want to know if there were other people helping you. So it's like if you asked me the question, you have to move a pile of logs. What are you going to think about? I would assume I have to move a pile of logs. That's why it was phrased that way. So I would not assume that I was going to get any help on this thing. I would just go, okay, well, I'd identify where I'm carrying the logs to, and try to make sure I got a clear path. If I got a wheelbarrow, probably use that. Get some gloves, and just start humping them over there quick, and just like bam, 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 as best as I
I
can.
guess I just assumed it was something I wasn't going to be able to carry myself. I was like, like I thought I was either going to need like some sort of tool or I was going to need, the help of like someone else.
Did you think what sort of tool you were going to need?
I don't know. I'm not very familiar on like the kind of things you would use to move a log, but
I mean,
uh,
surely you know what a wheelbarrow is.
yeah, like I was thinking something like that, but yeah, like one of those or some sort of like something you could set it on and like roll it. I don't know.
Like a dolly or a hand truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
Cool. So that I mean, all those answers sound pretty TE polar right there. So we're in that area. Nothing's seeming fishy. Let me look at your SI and NI for a second. So, can you talk to me about? Uh, well, let me ask the general question. Do you think you benefit more from learning from experience or from not being held back by experience?
Um, do I benefit more from learning from experience or not being held back by it? I Well, I think learning from my experience definitely helps, and I think experience is useful. I just think you know I I, I have a family member that's an SI down, and I think it's very easy to get stuck in that one bad experience you had, and I don't think people should. Um, I think they should be able to see beyond just like, oh, I had this one bad experience at a restaurant. That was one time.
Okay. Can you recall a place where you were when you heard a song for the first time?
Wait, well, uh, I can't think of a song in particular. I can't think of like the names of like a song in particular. Yeah,
Okay. I'd like you to
yeah.
do the following. I'd like you to tell me a story about a man named Tom who walks to one end of a swimming pool, picks up something from the bushes, is surprised by what he sees, and returns to hand it to his wife. Okay? Go.
You want me to explain? You want me to explain like
I
what's
want you
going
to
on
tell
there?
that story, but fill in the missing details.
Okay. So he found something in the bushes and he's taking it to his wife.
Well,
Okay.
the skeleton of it is Tom walks from one end of the pool to the other. He bends down, gets something out of the bushes he sees in the bushes. He's surprised by what he sees, and he takes it back to the other end of the pool again, where his wife is, and hands it to her. That's the skeleton of it. You provide the juicy bits.
Uh. Okay. Tom happened to notice his wife's phone that she lost and couldn't find, and he happened to miraculously find it in the bushes at one end of the pool. So he decided, he was so surprised, he decided to grab it and go and take it to his wife to show her.
Okay.
I don't
So
know. Maybe I'm.
now, when he shows it to her, she's extremely flustered and like, "Oh my god, how did it get over there?" She's acting really guilty and nervous. What do you think's going on?
Well, I mean, there's many things that could mean. Uh, maybe she was outside talking to someone and she didn't want Tom to know about it, and she accidentally dropped her phone out there.
So you mean she snuck off to talk to her lover on the phone and then dropped it, and then made her feel guilty when he retrieved it?
Yeah, maybe she's talking to another man on the phone and she's doing it outside the house, or maybe she's planning something she doesn't want him to know about.
I see. Okay. Um, Now, my real question, when I ask that question, is this question. Talk to me about what pool you visualize when you were telling that story. How did you visualize the setting?
Well, I visualize my backyard. I was picturing I was picturing my backyard, and I was kind of picturing Tom and his wife all moving around
So
my
when they
backyard.
went from one end of the pool to the other end, they went from one end of your pool to the other end of your pool.
Yes.
Okay. So I had a specific pool in mind as well. I suspect, although I don't know for sure, but I suspect that an ENFJ would not have a specific pool in mind, but simply some sort of composite archetypal pool, like an Olympic sized pool that they've seen in some Olympics or something. But
Mm,
I've not tested that out all the way to make sure. But
mm.
okay, can you remember the last time you went to your pool and used it?
Actually, I can. It was. Do you want me to get specific?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was this it was the second week of I had school this semester. It was the second week of this semester of school. Uh, I went in the pool because I had the day off. Uh, it was back in either late August or early September.
Okay. And do you remember the experience of swimming?
I just remember I went in there with my brother, and we talked and hung out and stuff.
And only one of you came out. Oh no, you both survived. Never mind. Um. Okay. Can you talk to me about what satisfies you?
What satisfies me? Uh, I, I mean, I would say a ton of things satisfy me. But maybe like the main thing would be like, you know, when I'm like working to achieve something, and eventually, like, I do, you know, when my efforts actually do show results. That's what sort of does start to satisfy me, or it's one thing at least.
Okay. Um. Can you remember the last time you felt satisfied?
Yes. Well, I don't know the particular date, but I know it was like a week or two ago. Because I saw a grade I received on something, and was like, I was happy because I was like, I put work into it. And
Okay.
I'm sorry if I'm missing like the point of whatever
No,
you're
no,
asking.
no. I'm just processing your answer. I don't mean to be. Sometimes it takes me a second
Yeah.
to think. It's like I usually am pretty rapid fire, but sometimes I want to process for a second and see
Yeah.
where I need to go. Okay. How are you feeling emotionally right now?
So I've thought about this question, and I don't fully understand, because I mean, I guess I'm happy, you know, but like I don't know how an FI dom would respond to that, because like for me, like, I wouldn't say I would say I'm happy, but I'm not like ecstatic, and I'm also not sad, but I'm just fine, you know.
I mean, F5 people usually say, I was kind of nervous and scared before we started, but then I'm still kind of nervous, but I'm also pretty excited, and I've been looking forward to this, and like that.
Yeah.
That's how they answer the question. Okay, so what do you think about the idea that feelings get stuck in your body?
Like, what do I make of that, or like, what's my interpretation?
Uh, if you were to see a video that was titled "Warning: Feelings get stuck in your body," w-
Okay.
would you watch it?
I mean, I might watch it, but like, it seems like it's like the idea that like certain feelings don't get expressed; they just kind of stay, inside. They don't. No one shows certain feelings or whatever. Like,
What do you
I
think would
guess.
be a more what do you think would be a less metaphorical way to express the concept?
Uh, something like something biologically or psychologically is blocking you from expressing your emotions, and it's like sitting, it's like affecting you physically, it's staying in your body. That'd be less metaphorical, I'd say.
That's just saying the same thing. Getting stuck in your body and staying in your body. Come on, that's the same thing. Uh, okay. How much detail can you tell me about your lunch yesterday? If you wanted to win it, add as many details as possible from your memories of lunch yesterday contest. And you're heaping on the piles of insignificant details. How many can you generate?
Well, I didn't really eat lunch yesterday, but I ate something, but it wasn't like anything like special. um
What was it?
I it was some leftover it was some leftover bacon from like the day before from like breakfast.
Okay,
So
let me demonstrate details, okay? So what I did is I went to the kitchen and I went and looked in the fridge and I looked all around. There wasn't really anything that grabbed my attention. And then I saw there was this leftover bacon. So I took that leftover bacon out and I put it on the counter for a second. And I went to get a paper plate. I was like, do I really need a paper plate? Because after all, it's already in aluminum foil. And then I took the aluminum foil by itself and I took it outside because I didn't really want to get bacon mess on the ground in the kitchen because I know how mom is always getting fussy about that shit. So then I took it outside. So then I unwrapped the bacon and then I remember taking the first bite and it was like, it's kind of cold and chewy. But I was really hungry, so it tasted good. Like that. Do that.
okay. uh okay, I was there. I was sitting at my table, on my computer, doing stuff. And then I felt myself start to get hungry, so I went into the kitchen and I remembered there was leftover bacon in the fridge. So, well, I was hoping there was. And I checked, and sure enough, I found it, and it was in this black Tupperware. And I took it out, I checked how much was in there, and then I just took that right with me back into the living room and ate it like that.
Okay. That's a pretty good amount of detail.
See, that's the thing. Like, I'm not sure about, because I know when you're asking like SI questions, and like I'm trying to like be as objective as I can, but like it's like in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is this is SI.
Okay. This happened the other day when I was in the car with Rachel. We were driving. We were listening to a live stream that I had recorded before, and um, then we started talking, and so we weren't. I turned down the live stream a bit, and we talked for a second, for a little bit, and then I turned it back up, and I was just finishing something. I was like, I was just commenting on something, but I had missed what it was I was commenting on. So I wanted to go back a little bit. But of course, I'm on my phone, so I pulled back way too far. And so we're back to listening to what we had been listening to like 10 minutes prior while driving. So I asked Rachel, because it was obvious, it's like as we're listening to this, I'm remembering with the parts that we listened to 10 minutes ago where we were in the car when that was on before. And in fact, the process of pulling up to the curb and me pausing it right when it said, or mistake incompetence for malevolence, pause. And then I recalled where we were because it's like, it was more than 10 minutes, and she had to kind of like fast forward a little bit because I couldn't do this while I was driving. So, and every time she fast forwarded a little bit, I was like, no, we were right around the Wells Fargo then. No, we were there. She was unable to recollect where we had been in any sense to when we had heard it the first time, even though it had only been 15 minutes ago. She didn't have a locality connection like that. So, talk about your own understanding of your own locality connection to things.
Well, okay. For example, if I rewatch like a film or like an episode of a TV show, I might think back to a time prior when I watched this before. Um, um, so, for instance, like over the summer, I rewatched a few episodes of. Oh, well, yeah, okay. Over the summer, I rewatched a few episodes of a TV show I enjoyed, and you know, after going through it over the course of or after thinking about it, it did make me a little bit nostalgic because it had been a show I'd watched like years in the past, and it sort of brought me back a little.
But you didn't like it anymore?
No, I just hadn't watched it in a while.
So why did you only watch 3 episodes of it?
Uh, when well, usually when I rewatch a show, like I don't usually end up rewatching the whole thing. Sometimes I'll just like go to like particular episodes that I know are good.
Okay.
Because I have like, for me it's like difficult, like sitting there because I already know what's gonna happen.
Okay. How long do you feel like so basically when you watch a movie or something one time, you feel like you know it at that point. You don't feel like you need to watch it multiple times to know it?
Yeah, yeah. I also I've noticed what I've enjoyed is like sometimes uh, I'll go back and like rewatch something I haven't seen in like 4 years or whatever, and like a film or something, and like I'll remember like sort of who was in the film, and maybe like vaguely like how it ended and like what the story was about. Um, but I won't remember like the little details of like certain character interactions or
Yeah.
like exactly where I was when I did all that.
Right.
Um,
Okay. So, do you have a sense of this is I want you to imagine that your guardian angel slash social worker from heaven is currently giving a PowerPoint presentation on your progress because you're his client and they all have to give these PowerPoints occasionally. And his topic or his thesis is where Brandon was, where Brandon is, where Brandon will be. Now you do his speech. Now remember, he's doing a nice positive, trying to frame like he's doing a good job with you. So you're gonna just basically give the public for show version of things.
okay. So like kind of like vaguely like a summary of like where I started to where I'm at to where I plan to go.
Yeah, from
Uh,
the perspective of the guy that heaven has put in, assuming guy heaven puts a guy in charge of everybody, one different guy, or like one guy might have multiple people on his caseload. Like maybe you're one of like five people he's got to deal with, and he's periodically got to do presentations to show that he's keeping up with his work and that you're making progress. Like
okay.
he used to throw all of his recyclables in the regular trash. Now he throws them in the recycling bin.
Oh, okay. Um, let me think. Okay. Uh, oh, okay. Brandon used to not like, you know, when he was young, he used to only like cheese pizza, and now he likes bacon and pepperoni and sausage, and he's changed in that manner. Let's see how else has Brandon changed. Uh,
Okay, well, that's not really the
I
overarching life vision that I'm looking for, but it's kind of to be expected. I think that correlates with TE. Give me 1 second. Okay, that's on. Okay. Kitty, look. You're gonna have to stay inside or out. This cat, I swear, she's trying to tell me to make it stop raining. I can't have no
you
control over
gotta
that.
do it, Eric.
It's beyond my powers. Okay.
Sorry if I'm like not answering the question like the way you want it. I'm trying to like.
No, I mean I think that answer is quite consistent with TE polar. If it in fact is a TE linked question, which I think it is, it's asking you to ordinate your self development and to say like, my previous identity was less mature in the following ways, which is to say, like I would say about myself, well, in my youth, I was I was wild, driven by FE, prone to making regrettable decisions, and and also without a meaningful map to understand human beings in the world. And as I got into the throes of adulthood, I sort of oppressed that authentic self by just drinking a lot of alcohol and doing drugs and stuff. And then, um, but I was successful professionally because it kind of dampened down my individualism, I guess. And then eventually I got sober, and now I have an ever broadening perspective on life. The end.
Okay. I could actually I could try and do something like that if you want.
Sure.
Um. Okay. So, uh, Brandon, when he was young, he was very outgoing, outspoken. Uh, he always wanted attention, and he always wanted to have fun, and he was always interacting with people, and he was always getting involved in like activities, and you couldn't stop him from you know hanging out with people, and he also loved to make jokes, and he was very like um, talkative, and just loved to be the center of attention. And now he's much more reserved, uh, much more quiet. Uh, he doesn't like to be the person that makes the first, necessarily makes the first interaction. Uh, maybe he prefers that others, make the first move, but he's able to, he's fine interacting after that, or he can make the first move, but he's still very reserved. Uh, you know, he makes time to meet people if they want to, but he's still, he limits his time to much more you know, uh, he has activities that he likes to do alone, uh, and he's just uh, much more okay with being by himself, I would say. And yes,
Why is that? What's the cause of that?
I don't know. I think it's like, uh, we talk about FE and stuff. I think part of it's FE uh, being a little too like cautious. You know, it's like, well, you can't really. Uh, well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like necessarily bad FE if you don't even make a move. I guess. Um, I also think it's you know, maybe like certain experiences, like or just with time, like overthinking certain things, as well as just finding things that, um, you know, are usually activities that you do by yourself, such as like reading or like watching YouTube
Masturbating.
videos. Yeah, that's a thing as well.
Yeah, it's usually something you do by yourself. Um,
Unless you've got close friends that
Things you usually do by yourself is a good family feud. A good family feud topic. Number one answer on the board would be like, poop or whatever. Number two answer on the board would be um, I, isolation in jail. You've been put in isolation. Number three would be uh, I don't know. I'm not sure what the number three answer would be. Maybe only three answers. Masturbating would be number three. Okay. Anyway, regardless, got a little sidetracked there. Um, so, can you talk about an instance where you may have caught yourself? You think you've caught yourself using a non-conscious function?
um trying to think. Um, so maybe if I get into arguments, it can be a little bit difficult for me to like contain certain emotions, uh, which maybe I'm wrong, but I think like that's FI is that you're expressing your um. So that's one thing I've noticed. Like if I get into a heated argument, it can be a little difficult containing certain emotions.
So you don't always retain placidity that you'd like to retain?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Okay. Does it stick with you after the fact? How much headspace does it lease after the fact? Like how much do you worry about? Ah, shit, that didn't go as I had hoped.
um. Well, it depends, because I mean, even if I express like the emotions, it kind of depends on like how they were expressed. I think I don't necessarily like express emotions that I'd say would make me too vulnerable, uh, uh, or at least, I mean, maybe if I'm comfortable with someone, like I'm more likely to be a little bit more vulnerable. But
How would you
I mean,
describe your own expression of harm prevention?
like how do I protect myself? Uh,
Okay, that's interesting right there. So, um, you default to harm prevention being about yourself, but I'm talking about harm prevention of something other than yourself.
Oh, okay. Um, how harm prevention is something other than myself. Uh, well, I would put it in a safe place. I mean, it would kind of depends on what it is, but if it's some sort of object, put it in a place that it's much less likely to get harmed. I would
What
also say
what about a
that,
person?
well, even with people, I mean, maybe you can have them in a place, I mean,
You stay in your
keep
safety
them,
cage.
yeah, yeah. Um, but also, you could let a few people in the nearby area be aware of, like, we don't want this individual or this object to get harmed. So let's just, keep them in mind.
Okay. That's it's a funny way of, of preventing harm is to tell other people to prevent harm. Oh, well, that's very convenient.
I don't know.
It's like you don't think to yourself, "How will I protect my child when I have one?" You think, well,
Oh, well,
some hypothetical
guard
thing,
them. Like,
some hypothetical person that might need my protection. Like you don't actually think like, oh wait, I actually do care about people in some sense, and have some efforts towards harm prevention. If nothing else, I try not to say things that hurt their feelings or make them feel bad. So regardless, that's kind of funny. So okay, I don't know really what else you could be besides an INFJ because the only other thing I was just double triple checking for was ISFJ or ISFP. Um, but uh, I just I don't see I just don't see that as conscious SI. You know, like, do you have an equivalent story to my potato touch story?
um, what's your? Did you explain that to me or?
I will if you haven't heard it. I went to a restaurant one time. I sat at the counter up front, and you can see the waiters as they're prepping the food and stuff. And I noticed that when you order a meal, which comes with the baked potato, the waiters pushed the edge of the potato with their fingers and then scooped the butter. And I didn't like that idea, so I thought if I ever order a meal here, I'm going to make sure I keep an eye on it so that they don't touch my potato too much, you know. So, sure enough, eventually I went back there and I did order a meal. And I was eagle eye the whole time on the waiters. But and then all of a sudden my plate arrives, and I was like, how did I not catch them dealing with my potato? And then I realized I'd ordered rice pilaf, not a potato. Thing is, that's an example of SI over NI, okay? My SI thing that I had thought about many times since I'd witnessed the potato touching in the first place was telling me, remember this rule, Eric. When you go there and you order a meal, make sure you watch the waiter. They're going to touch your potato. So that overrode the fact, overrid the fact that I ordered rice pilaf. So in the moment, I had changed reality. NI is paying attention to what's going on, right? SI is paying attention to what went on before. So
Oh,
in that moment, my SI supplanted my NI, and I realized after the fact, oh, this is an example of me being SI conscious, even when NI would have been preferable to use, right?
mhm.
Can you give me some sort of comparable example like that from in your own relationship with SI?
um. So you were concerned about like the baked potato, even when you didn't order it,
Right.
or
because I was stuck with the thing I had been keeping in mind rather than the reality I had in front of me, which is I got rice pilaf.
Okay. Um. So, for instance, well, we'll see if this is relevant. My my father will cook spaghetti for everyone, and he likes to put the food on the plates, or he usually used to do that. But um, you know, in the past few months, I've started uh, not to enjoy the way in which he lays out the food. So he'll give me like so much spaghetti and way too much sauce, and I'm like, this is like, this is way too much. So what I've started doing is I make sure that I let him know that I want to do it myself, because I I don't trust him not to give me way too much. So I'll make sure to get the amount of spaghetti I want, the amount of sauce I want on it, and make sure I do it the way I want it. Because in the past, I've had experiences where he's put way too much food on my plate, and I haven't enjoyed it.
Okay, interesting. So that's you are incorporating some SI stuff there, but you're really talking about how you SE'd it so that you didn't have to SI it. So, and so because you'd already NI'd it as the problem that was too FE complicated to SIFE, or too SI complicated, one of the two. And so you just decided to SE the problem off of the SI field into the SE field. You just do it yourself. So that, I think, is not what I would expect from an SI person. I mean, they might have the same thing happen. They might say, well, I decided to do it myself. But it's like, I suspect the ISFJ they'd be very much in charge of their food from the get-go. But I'm not really sure. But yeah, as far as I can tell, you're an INFJ.
Okay.
And I'm feeling a little distrusty of myself of some previous, because I had a couple of bad typings recently where I got the person wrong in a little batch. After having a bunch of super good ones, feeling like super pimped, like I'm never gonna get anything wrong, and then bam, bam, So I'm feeling suspicious, but I still can't find any non-INFJ in you, really. You definitely seem FE. In fact, when I took a breath to say something while waiting for you to finish saying, you paused to give me room to talk, which is textbook tool function FE. And yeah, you're, as far as I can tell, not an ISFJ. You don't prioritize, it doesn't seem to me, retaining insignificant details from experience, although you're capable of demonstrating it when I push on it. It doesn't seem like a value. When it comes time to SI, you go SE. So all this stuff seems consistent to me. And the TE polar seems correct as well, because you solve problems by SEing, not by having a particular system of how to build your own plate. You'll just get it right when you do it, right? So, okay, now that we've determined, yes, you're an INFJ, let's talk a little bit about that self-concept thing. So, I mean, the issue comes from having 2 backslot and 2 instrumental epistemology functions. Your epistemology functions are your deliberation and your knowledge functions. So both of your particularist epistemology functions, the ones that link to self, are on the back slot, FI and SI, and they're both in instrumental places. So you've got good access to FI, but unfortunately, FI, by and large, for most INFJs, is a source of a bad thing has happened. And INFJ's emotions are retrieved and utilized when somebody's crossed a boundary and they need to express to that person that this is a personal boundary of mine you're crossing and I need you to stop. When that happens, it means they're dealing with somebody who's sort of bumblefucking their way ham-fistedly through the social interaction such that they're not picking up on any of your initially very nuanced and then increasingly reluctantly blunt cues such that you have to actually articulate your feelings. Ideally, the INFJ would like to reveal very little authenticity of themselves until the other person has revealed everything they have to reveal. Now, the problem with this is once that's occurred, 9 times out of 10 or 99 out of 100, the INFJ no longer finds that person interesting enough to bother revealing who they are to them anyway. And they move on to somebody else where they don't maintain that relationship. There are exceptions. ENTPs, for example, can be interesting over the long term to INFJs because we specialize in being surprising to some extent. And we also are insightful, and we also respect the insight and intuition of the INFJ, who shares our fondness for, I guess you'd say, subtext and nuanced conversation and discourse.
Okay. Interesting. So, no, it's just because, like, I've been thinking, like, a lot about, like, the kind of things, like, because I'm like, 21 right now, and I've been thinking a lot about, like, what things do I want to do with my life? And, like, I have ideas, but, I'm always, like, thinking, well, do I really want this, And I'm thinking maybe that's due to, like, a poor self-concept, in a way, because, I'm not sure if it's, like, I think I want it, but, am I going to get it and then find out it's not going to make me happy?
Well, the thing about having a back slot, either instrumental or polar FI, is that it's a function that prevents regret. So, when it's most well used, the individual is guided towards that which they truly love to do and are clear about that which they truly love to do, right? But when it's on the back slot, then it tends to have a much smaller time frame, such that when used at home, so to speak, both INFJ and ENTP want to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and don't want to do what they don't want to do when they don't want to do it, and are very kind of childish about like, well, don't bother me, I'm in the middle of something right now, and I know I've been looking at this for hours, but as far as I'm concerned, I've just, executed this many turns in a turn-based world, and the rest of the world should be paused while I'm looking at this book. So,
Okay.
so there's a childish relationship with FI that's implicit to having it in the 6th or 7th. I'm a good example of that, and it shows why my TE is countervalued, because TE is the thing that says, all right, now you've made your decision, now stick with it so we can so we can have a plan here. And then the SE says, now we're going to follow through on it. But the thing is, my NE and FE combo make it such that I'm thinking about ideas to say to people. I'm not thinking about what I wanted to do before. It's really hard, right? So I'm super childish with my FI. You're a little less so with yours in the 6th slot. But the thing is, you're much less so in the world with it, but more so or equally so at home.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I know someone that's an ESTP, and I think I know what you're getting at with that. Because I think I've seen some similar things. Yeah, I don't know. I've just because I think with me, like, one concern I've had is, like, sometimes I feel like, especially, like, when I'm interacting out in the world, I feel like I'm so FE that like, I almost, like, I want to be more I guess, I don't know, but it's like, it's hard. Like, I almost feel like there's, like, my FE is, like, preventing me from.
Do you want to be more FI or do you want to be more TI? I mean, the question is, do you want to sort of get your arbitrary way more, or do you want to defend arguments more or attain fairness in some way more?
Well, no, I
Because here's the thing, like, chances are you're never going to say, hey, let's go to dinner at Don Juan's Mexican restaurant. You're going to always say to the other person, where do you want to go? Yeah, I'm down. What? Unless they say something terrible, you prefer the other person
yeah,
get their way because you don't really care because you countervalue
yeah.
your own feelings. You'd rather have the FE points.
Hmm. Okay. I Yeah, yeah. I guess I do like that, but I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like I'm I'm so FE that, like, I'm like, you're a little too careful, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're the most careful type. But here's the thing. I think the growth arc is to be right and defensively so. If you're equipped with the right arguments, and so that you're communicating about your NI ideas in ways that allow for welcome some pushback, but that you're going to win those exchanges, then you can become this kind of super beast, right? Because you've got the pristine, like, on Golden Pond thing going on. Like the mist on the water. It's like, oh, it's so chill around this person because you guys are, like Spacey used to say, you're cool mist. Anyway, if you're right, then you double down the impacts of that, right? Like, so the easy thing for you will always be to project warmth. The challenging part is to project competence, and that's where you find satisfaction and sense of self ultimately, is being competent. And how are you going to be competent? Well, you can be competent in lots of different ways by Googling shit and seeking the advice of others and finding the right person to tell you how to do things that'll help you work around your TE. TE offers plenty of workarounds in the status quo with all these YouTube videos showing you how to do shit and just following instructions and stuff. You don't have to figure out that much stuff yourself. But the bottom line is, if you can, if you're confident that you've got TI shit that's strong and can back up your NI shit, and you're clear on which NI shit you don't want to bring out because you can't back it up, and you are both the most insightful person or intuitive person, but also the rightest person, then you go, okay, now I got something going on. My sense of self is that my intuition about my own intuition has been validated. I am right. Because to have a clear sense of yourself, you've got to believe that beyond just your intuition. You got to say, I'm right, not just because I'm an NIDOM, And not just because I can schmooze and present people in ways that make them be more receptive to what I'm saying than they might otherwise be, but because I can win arguments when they're not receptive.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah.
I have to pee again, but I'm listening. I still have my headphones on. I'm just going to be over here peeing.
Okay.
So, so what other things do you have particularly thought out you wanted to cover coming in? Anything like you got a list or something, some pressing stuff? I want to make sure we get to it.
Well, I did have some questions about the Enneagram.
Oh, right.
Maybe you could.
All right, here's a quick trait type test. The nice thing about trait type tests, the Eric trait type test is super quick. It's not really called the trait type test because apparently Catherine Fobb has copyrighted that word or something, trademarked it or something. So it's called a triple type test. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, so the first question is this: when somebody comes at you with anger, are you likely to come back at them with anger? Are you likely to appease them, say, okay, fine, you have your way, or are you likely to try to reason with them quickly, and if they don't seem reasonable, then just walk away?
I'm probably likely to come back at them with anger, I'd say.
Okay, now, when it comes to why shouldn't you feel ashamed of yourself, is your answer because I'm super helpful? Is your answer because I'm super accomplished or attain on conventional metrics? Or is your answer because I'm too much of a rebel to care about your standards anyway?
Because I'm accomplished.
Okay, and then the third one is when you have like looming deadlines, stuff hanging over you, do you try to figure out everything you can so that it's no longer scary because you understand it so well? Do you retreat to what you already know and try to make that apply to the current situation? Or do you bury your head in the sand and pretend nothing and play the day away until the last minute?
What was the second one? Sorry.
Second one is like retreat to what you know and like use I can cut this part of this. Let's say you have a paper due, right? I can cut this part of this other paper and use this other part of this other paper and put them together. I just write a little bit and I can voila, it's done. That'd be a 6 kind of approach. A 5 kind of approach would be master the understanding of the thing I have to write about, so then it's easy to write about. And the 7 approach is like, what paper? I'm busy playing Minecraft.
Probably the second one.
Okay. So, which of those questions was hardest to answer of the 3 sets of questions I gave you?
The last one.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so which of the first 2 were easier to answer?
The first one actually was probably the easiest.
Okay, so that makes you an 836. Now, an 836, I will look up what it's called. Okay. People might have thought, based on that affect, that maybe you were an FI Dom, which is what I was thinking because that tends to correlate with FI Doms. They have a lot of trouble. Well, it depends, and they can't answer questions that aren't linked to something real. But it was pretty evident by the end that that's not what's going on there. It was probably just overactive FE, if anything. So that's my thoughts on that. I think probably everybody who sees it will agree you're an INFJ, except for probably Jeff Shaw, who will say, no, you're not. But he says that about everybody I type. So.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, okay. I was just mainly like worried, like, it was more so like an FE, like, hope I didn't embarrass myself or something.
No,
You
no,
know.
no. You're great. Everyone will
Okay.
like you. It'll go great.
Okay.
It's gonna
Okay.
be a party in your mouth you'll never forget.
Okay. Okay.
All right, cool. I'll stop the recording.